Do you have a good memory? Not like the ability to retain information type of good memory, but like do you have a favorite memory? Like a memory that you think about and you're just like, yeah, that one's pretty great. And that was a pretty great time in my life. That was a pretty great season that I got to enjoy. Close your eyes right now. Try to imagine what that memory is. Where were you? Who were you with? What did it smell like? What season was it? What were you doing? What sticks out about it? Think about that. Yeah. For me, I remember that my favorite memory, my best memory, was back when I was about 10, back home in Indiana. You see, we didn't really have a big house. Our house was really just about the size of this tiny stage that I'm on, not the one behind me, but this one up front. And I remember sitting at a desk just like this one and staring out through the window on that perfect fall day, watching the leaves cascade down, smelling that fresh air as it came through the cracked window, and smelling the pumpkin spice candles my mom had burning in the other room. I would hear my siblings outside. They were just goofing around, my dad and my mom. I'd hear her singing in the other room as she just cleaned. All the while, I sat there and was just perfectly content to be in that moment. I would look forward to the things like Halloween that were coming up. I'd look forward to Christmas that was around this corner and going to pumpkin patches and doing all these fun things. But in that moment of just complete and total perfectness, I found myself at peace. And I began to wonder if maybe one day anything could ever top that. And on occasion, nowadays, on that perfect fall day or when I'm with my family back at home, I begin to have that memory come back. And I think to myself, man, that's good. I just have to stop whatever it is that I'm doing and just be like, God, thank you. This is awesome. I remember one such fall day back when I was at Johnson. And I was sitting there just pounding away at my keyboard, typing out some sort of 5-page exegetical paper for a class I long since forgot. And I remember a breeze rushing through the window, back out the door, and like pushing me back as I smelled it, reminding me of that perfect moment when I was younger. And God reminding me now that He's still there. He's still with me. I remember backing up, taking a second to just relax, to enjoy the moment. I uttered under my breath a prayer of praise to God, saying, thank you for this moment. Quietly enough that I didn't think my roommate heard me, but it turns out he did. And he began to ask me what I was saying, and so I told him my best memory. I told him what I was praising God for. And then he began to share with me his best memory. And we began to dream together. And it went from looking at our past to starting to look at our present to glaring into the future. We began to talk about all the things that we looked forward to and how God might surpass our present joys. You see, I had this dream, and I shared with him. I want to be married. I want to have a family. I wanted to be able to provide for them, to be able to be a part of a community like the one that we had at Johnson. And he began to share some of his own dreams, but then about halfway through, he stopped and said some of the most profound words I can ever remember anyone my age saying to me. You see, Troy, he wasn't like the rest of the people I knew. He was so connected to his faith, and it showed in every aspect of his life. From the moment that he woke up with his morning prayer to the minute that he went to bed, sharing how God moved in his life with me. But he didn't come from much. He was part of a big family, and they didn't have a lot of money because they were missionaries, and so he lacked that. He also struggled with school and his academic work. And despite his attempts to study really, really hard and go and get all this extra help, he began to realize that there was this tension between working, which he tried to do to pay off some of the loan that he was incurring, and schoolwork. And eventually, he actually had to take a year off because it had become such a burden that he could not continue and his grades got so low that he couldn't keep up. But then, when he did come back, I got to be his roommate. And that was pretty cool. But that's beside the point. He struggled, and yet despite all of that, in that moment, during the school year, I think it was right before finals too, in that moment, he chose to be happy. And he looked at me and he said this, I know that these are the things of my heart. I know that I desire these things and I want them, but in order to be truly content, I have to first let them go. I can't hold on to them. And it blew my mind because, again, he didn't come for much. And what was this moment but a nice breeze that reminded me of my past? But to him, he saw that God was moving. So he didn't look towards the future as an escape from his present realities, but rather he looked towards the scripture as a guide through the circumstances that he found himself in. And even when times got really, really tough, you could still find him turning back to God. I remember watching him on some days that were rough for him as he would lay on the bed and he would open up this tiny little pocket Bible. He'd open up to the Psalms and he'd read either a couple of verses, a couple of chapters, depending on the day and how bad things were. And he'd sit there and he'd read them aloud, whether I was there or not. And by the end of his time, by the time he closed the book and put it back in his little shirt pocket, you could tell something was different. A smile, a peace came across his face that was unlike anything else. And it looked like he was ready to take on the world. Not because he was confident of himself, but because he knew that God was in control. And that despite the circumstances that he found himself in, things were going to be all right. Now, this past week, we were looking at the Psalms of disorientation, talking about how the Bible and how the Psalms work as a guide and a voice for our doubts, our fears, and our expression of grief. And this week, we're turning to the Psalms of peace, of orientation. You see, God desires for our life to be like the life of a tree planted beside streams of flowing water, right? No matter what storm comes, that tree is deeply rooted and it has the nourishment it needs to continue to live and will not be uprooted. Same thing with us. He wants us to be deeply rooted in our relationship with him and for us to be continued to be nourished by this water, by his word. And you see, it's not that we don't face the same circumstances as everybody else, but the difference is that we know that God is present with us in our reality. And we believe that he is actively engaging in our lives, even when we can't see it. You see, the Psalms orient us, not to be sure of ourselves, not to give us overconfidence, but rather to help us in faith believe that God is sure in us and in his decision to love on us. Think of it kind of this way, though. When we read the Psalms and we treat them as a prayer and as this guide to a right relationship with God and to a right relationship with ourselves, it's kind of like when we speak something into existence. You know what I mean? Well, think about it like this. What happens when you're having a really bad week, but you want it to be better? And so you decide that you're going to continue to say, hey, this week, it's going to be a good week. I have faith that this week, it'll be good. And that I'm going to do really well on this test. And you start to say it. And then you go to your friends, and then you say it again. And you kind of reaffirm in yourself this belief. And now that you've brought somebody else into it, they're affirming your belief, and they're helping hold you accountable and looking towards you to see if you really believe it. And so then you become a little bit stronger in that. Same thing with the Psalms. When we engage with the Psalms and we read them as our own words, and we realize these are not just the prayers of a psalmist hundreds and hundreds of years ago, but these are our prayers when we choose to read them like that. All of a sudden, it begins to reaffirm our belief and our hope for a better future and begins to remind us of the things that we have to be thankful. And that's kind of what we want you guys to be able to do tonight. To get together in your small groups and to hang out and just chat about how life's going. But also to take a time to read Psalms 22, Psalms 85, 1 through 12. You're going to read that and read it as your own prayer. Take turns reading a verse at a time and realize that these aren't the words of someone that's long since dead, but rather, when we choose to read them as our own words, they become our prayer. They're a guide. They're like giving us the words that we don't know what to say. And they remind us of the good, of the peace, of the joy, of those good memories that we have, and they give us the opportunity to praise God for them. So, take turns reading them. Realize and treat it kind of like a prayer time, because that's what it is. When you read them out loud and when you read them to people, they are that communal expression of faith, that communal prayer. And then, when you guys are done, there's a list of questions leaders got that they'll want to walk you through, and I encourage you guys to engage with that, to really lean into one another and see how it is that you feel that the Psalms can lead you to a better place, to a better relationship with God. And then, when you're done, we'll see you guys later. But we look forward to keeping in contact with you throughout the week. So if you want to reach out and you want to have some one-on-one time with any of us, talk to your leader about it. We'd love to connect with you however we can. And if you have any really cool like game ideas or anything super fun that you would like to do, let us know. And we'd love to listen and see what we can get in the works for you guys. For those of you that are new and that haven't joined us before, we encourage you to go on to the comment section, write your name and your grade, and I will message back and get you connected with the right people. All right? Well, chat with you guys soon.